Mark, wrestling news is happening.
Oh, it happens all the time, 24/7.
And it's news that I unfortunately spoiled a little bit when I texted you.
Yeah, so it was about less than 24 hours after the Survivor Series. I had one of those things where I like them being on Saturday, because on Sunday I can sort of watch it in dribs and drabs.
Yes,
in between doing all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And I'd put it on, and I had actually got halfway through the main event.
Right.
And I checked a little WhatsApp, having stayed off Twitter, checked a little WhatsApp, and you were like, we should probably talk about the Punk thing.
I'm so
and I was like,
sorry.
I did look at it, and I did sort of go, I don't know what that is. Maybe he's died. That was a possibility. Maybe he's, and I thought, it can only really be one thing, can't it? So I watched that. It did get to the end, and I did go, no, I haven't got that right. Because the WWE did quite a clever thing there. They did end the show, and they had the little graphic come up that they always have at the end of the show. And Michael Cole went, well, that's it from us. What an amazing night it's been. And then it just went quiet. And I was like, oh, that was an anticlimax, thinking that Punk was going to come out. And then Punk came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was underwhelming.
Well, everything about it was quite deftly done, interestingly done, and then Punk appears. Everything after that moment, the pop was good, nothing else, really.
Yeah.
A man comes out in a top.
A 45-year-old man wanders out. When he comes out, he tends to kind of like just not react to the noise. That's his thing, you know. It's still a bit beneath him. He's repulsed by applause and
popularity, yeah. Not by the money that it brings, though.
That's what he likes.
That's what he likes.
And he did come out a little bit, and he was it sort of looked a bit like in a porno where they kind of go, my stepdad is coming over, and he just walks in a white top, and he sort of doesn't know what his motivation is, and he looks the wrong side of young.
Yes, yeah. He's been around the block a bit.
I think the funny thing about Punk is he is such a rare person in wrestling, and it's because he's one of the very few people who what he is. If you had Seth Rollins go to AEW, you'd be a bit like, oh, Seth Rollins is signed with AEW.
Yeah.
But with Punk, you're like, oh, that's good, because I know what he is. He's a chippy bloke, and he causes trouble. And that is such a rare thing in wrestling, that you just go, I understand what your character is, because your character, not a character.
No,
That's what's so exciting about it.
He obviously, he's money. He is money, and he brings money, and he brings eyes, and he brings bums on seats and stuff like that. But is it fair to say that WWE would be, it's slightly more professional, would it be fair to say, than
that's
AEW?
really true. And one of the things
helps with CM Punk's trouble that he brings.
Look, I think there's some interesting things in play here. One is that Punk had been very vocal about AEW, like it was run by children. Yeah. He said he was very annoyed over All In Weekend, which turned out to be pretty much his last week with the company, that they hadn't met him at the airport in London with a car, and he had to go on the tube because he wasn't going to call an Uber, because he had a point to prove. And I think what he was comparing that to, of course, would have been the years that he spent with WWE, where it was a very different organisation. I think there is the sense that he felt AEW was run by fans, and that Tony Khan was a fan. And you can imagine them all sitting around just going, wouldn't it be cool if, wouldn't it be cool? And Punk is just sitting there going, this is not how it's done.
Yes.
It's a little bit like you've gone from, I don't know, working in Apple in the corporate headquarters, and you've gone out because they've given you a good offer to work at a branch of CEX, right? And it's the one on the Holloway Road. And you are sitting there just going,
I'm working with the same stuff.
I'm getting the same good money.
Yeah.
But this is just tawdry. There's the one in the Holloway Road, I mean, half of it's been boarded off for about a year because there's been water damage, right? And I think
the last thing you need with ram chips.
I think so for WWE to find him out of contract, of course you're going to go, well, he's one of the few proper, genuine main eventers that we can bring in.
Yeah.
There's no one really on the same level.
I just can't see him being brought on to be that. Even he is damaged goods to a certain extent, but I still can't see him being brought and being crushed to make a point, because that's not really what the product is anymore. Back in the day, Dusty Rhodes would be covered in polka dots and done all the stuff that happened to him.
And we say that he's damaged, but the reality is his backstory makes him a far more interesting character than if you'd have brought in, I don't know, Samoa Joe. You look at it and you just sort of go, his real life plays into everything that happens in wrestling. And that means people excited going, what's happening? It does something brilliant in wrestling, which is it blurs the line between fact and fiction, which is everything that wrestling is about. And when you have someone like that, that is lightning in a bottle, that you do not know where the real starts and the real ends. And we saw this at Survivor Series, where as he comes out, and I do feel like I've seen him just come out in front of crowds to be cheered.
Yes.
And just be silent, and more than I've actually seen him wrestle in the last 3 years. And out he comes, and Seth Rollins was filmed by fans just shouting, fuck you, fuck you, and giving him the finger.
I get the feeling that was a work, and I get a feeling that he would have been one of the few wrestlers who would have been informed, simply because he has been quite vocal, and presumably there's probably some narrative interest in having those two have a bit of a...
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that I do look at, but what they did is they basically had him dropping the F-bombs and stuff, which is an unusual corporate decision, but what they want to do is that worked shoot. I'm a little bit worried that all we're going to get is worked shoots from now on. Drew McIntyre said to be really unhappy that Punk was back.
Right.
The current understanding is that the deal was basically not signed until the day. They'd spent 10 days knowing it would happen, but the only two people who knew were the sort of, corporate guys, Triple H and Nick Khan. I felt for Randy Orton here.
Right, that was his big return, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah. And what you noticed, actually, in the way they did it, they played into the idea that the crowd thought CM Punk was going to be the fifth man in the War Games match.
Yeah.
There was some chants of CM Punk, which were, audible on TV. And they gave that gap where there was a pause and everything, and you thought, is it going to be Punk? And out came Randy Orton. And I did feel for him. He was sacrificed a bit there.
Yes.
He's been out for 18 months. He's a WWE lifer. And he also came back and he looks like Batista now. He's bad back, been out for 18 months. Yeah. All he's been doing is
chest and leg.
Let's be kind, working out, right?
Chest and shoulders.
Do you have to give me steroids because my back's bad?
What a shame.
Me.
What a shame.
He also, I don't know what he's been doing to his face, but it looks like he's just been slamming it into a paving slab for the last 18 months. He looked very much like the Destroyer when the Destroyer would take his mask off.
Well, maybe
chewed up old nose.
Well, maybe he's back now, and he's kind of like he needs a third act. He needs to look a little different. He needs to look like he's headbutting the wall.
He's very much got the if you like, the eras of Randy Orton, and this is the new one where he's effectively the Crusher from 1960s at Milwaukee.
Any sort of indication about what he's going to get up to?
Well, I mean, what they're doing with Seth Rollins is also what they did with Cody Rhodes, who is the other guy who came from AEW in a surprise. And Seth Rollins has become a sort of odd character in that he's almost like the main event version of Tito Santana. When people came to the WWE, whatever they were, they would have their first match on TV with Tito Santana. And Santana would lose and they would go, okay, so they're going to be a star. And Santana was there to get those guys over. And I slightly feel that with Seth Rollins. They somehow feel that he is the embodiment of the WWE, that he is the most WWE person out of everybody.
Yeah.
And so they do tend to go, we've got Rhodes in, we've got Punk in, let's put them with Rollins. Rollins can go, the fans love him, and he's Mr. WWE. And I slightly go, I wish we could see something more exciting. I don't know.
Cargill.
Yeah. But I do look at it as well, and I do sort of go, I don't know quite what I'm looking forward to seeing with Punk.
Well, because his in-ring stuff hasn't really, I don't really care.
It's not as good as
the stuff
him being a dickhead. And that's what's great.
But it's kind of that dose of reality, because we've all worked in places where someone's being a nightmare and they're just, he's off sick again because he says he's got this thing. It's just all that stuff. The WWE.
We text room saying, did you talk to that girl I went out with 3 years ago? Like, what? I had to think about it as well, right? And I was thinking, he has to go to WWE. He's not going to go to Impact because it's going to be no money and no fans, and then he's damaged his standing. He's not going to go to Japan because Japan is hard, right?
Japan is hard
really
work.
Hard. That's tiring. He doesn't really like wrestling. He doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, like, rocking the mic isn't that important out there for Western stars.
He wants to be in front of big crowds, and he can work big crowds in the palm of his hand like nobody else of his generation. He is a great asset. But I think he does realise that this is the only place he can go. The last place, he's burnt that down, right?
He's ruined it.
He left and he was like flipping them off and going, see you later, masturbators.
Yeah.
And this is what he's got to do. But I think it's also what he wanted. And I did look at this and I did think, has his behaviour since All Out just been an attempt to get kicked out of his contract so he can go to WWE, I'm ready now, and they can let him back in?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that because I know he is annoyingly legal. But I did look at it and I did think, if you were trying to get out of a contract, you would spend all of your time goading your co-workers, wouldn't you?
Yeah, until they did something, and then,
lecturing them.
I mean, just bringing your dog into work. You've given up, mate.
The best one is when they did Collision, he reportedly got everyone together and said, look, let's just have no drama, please. it's a little bit sort of, if only we knew who had driven the hot dog cart through the window,
Yeah.
The interesting thing I find about this is I think Punk will have a really good run now. This happens a lot in wrestling, the second act. It happened with Shawn Michaels, for example, where, you were a nightmare and then you go, do I want to leave this industry with everybody hating me, or shall I just go, oh, he was one of the best of all time?
Yes.
And I think Punk is probably at that point now where what would be left for him if everything collapses in WWE? Nothing. There is nothing. Although there'll always be something because he's a big star and there'll always be someone giving him money. But that, I think, used as a special attraction in the same way that, you do Brock Lesnar and the big stars. I think there's a lot there. But, I mean, please don't dial down on the piss and vinegar CM Punk. Without the piss and the vinegar and the unprofessionalism. Exactly. What is he? Neutered. He's a big neutered straight edge cat.
And I've come to two words, and I'm afraid to say them, honestly. And it's not because they're not true. It's because I'm a little bit scared of how true they actually are. I'm home.
There's what people like to call WWE drones out there that aren't going to like anything I have to say about that company. So I try to limit what I do say, but everything I do say is the truth. I was going to die. You know what I mean? They will run you dry, and I was on that path.
I'm home. If you all try to understand that I was never going to get healthy physically, mentally, spiritually, or emotionally, staying in the same place that got me sick in the first place, I'm home. And I'd like to think that maybe this company will be better after Vince McMahon's dead, but the fact is, it's going to get taken over by his idiotic daughter and his doofus son-in-law. I'm home. Back. I'm not here to make friends, I'm here to make money.
Take it off. Yeah, come on.